Hello, this is Lauren with Wearing History Patterns, Wearing History blog. This is part 2 of the side opening on the 1910 skirt. You can use this for any garment from way far back until probably the 1930s. Go watch part 1 if you haven't yet, and then come back here and watch this part. So we are talking about how to put in our side bit here. If you are doing wash fabric like a cotton, something lightweight that's not bulky, you can cut all your facings out of the same self fabric as you're making your skirt out of. I'm making my final one out of a cotton twill, and it's a little bit too heavy to use a self, so I am using some facing fabrics that are lighter weight. Mine are a quilting cotton. In the period, they often used like a cotton sateen or even some kind of like rayon lining or whatever they were called then, synthetic silk. So in any case, you are going to want to put the opening on your left side. So if you're standing straight ahead, take your hand, your left hand, put it on your hip. That's the side where you want the fastening to go, on your left side. That's almost always the case. So when you sew up your pieces, make sure you leave the left side open. This is the inside front skirt that we're looking at now, because you can see my serged edges here that should match, but I was too lazy to throw the serger. So leave it free above the left side on the notches. So all the way up, leave it free above the notches. On the right side, you can sew it all the way up, finish your edges however you're going to do that. You want to finish your edges before we progress. And then I want you to press this seam open so it's easier to work with. It won't be all going each way, whatever it wants to do. Make sure you press that open and do the same on the other side. Okay, so this is my final fabric. Now, like I said, I cut my linings. I kind of like the idea of make, do, and mend, even though I technically probably don't have to. They would, the way they would have had to do in the World War I era. I'm just using whatever I had on hand, which happens to be a quilting cotton that has a kind of similar tan, and it's lighter weight than my twill, which is why I've chosen it. You can see that this has like a much heavier, stiffer hand, which means it's going to be bulkier at the side seam, which is why I've chosen to do this. A little bit of peakage is period. Don't worry too much about it. If you can get a closer match, it's better. So you're going to cut 2 of these, one of each fabric, or 2 of the same if you have a lightweight fabric. And you're going to cut 1 of these, the big wide one. Now, the first thing to do to get ready is to take this wider underlap piece, and you're going to fold it like this. And then we are going to go and stitch these sides. So go stitch those, then press this right side out and bring it back. On these ones, I want you to put these right sides together. And I want you to go all the way around 3/8 of an inch here, here, and here. All the way around. Leave this side open and then flip that out and come back. Don't forget to cut your corners and make those corners nice and crisp. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, quickly, this is what it looks like when I've sewn the underlap portion. It was folded on itself, sewn at top and bottom, and then I clipped my corners to get the point a little bit more clear. Do the outside edge of this one all the way, clip those corners too, and then flip this right side out. Okay, here's the 2 pieces turned right side out. Ta-da! It's got a nice facing on it. And this one is folded on itself, and then press that edge nice and crisp after you're done. I forgot to note that if you're using a somewhat lightweight fabric, you might want to interface one of these pieces or both of these pieces. Nah, this one doesn't need to be interfaced. This one you might want to interface because you're going to need something to attach your hooks and eyes to. And if it's really flimsy, you might get some holes as the hooks and eyes pull. Like if you're using a really fine open lawn or a batiste or something like that, you're going to want a little bit of stability. In the period, they would have just sewn in some lightweight cotton. You can use fusible if you want. I'm not going to tell. Of course, that's not period correct, but those are the 2 options that you can do. Now, on the original period skirt I showed in the last video, this edge was top stitched all the way around. If you want to do that now, you can, but if you're planning on turning the facing under and encasing your seams like this, don't top stitch. Don't do it until the very end because you won't be able to get in there. Since I'm going to serge it, I'm going to top stitch this. Okay, so do that, and then we will put these into the skirt. Okay, I'm going to top stitch. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Now, you can get as very, very close to these edges as you can, or I'm using these 1/8 of an inch guide that I've got on my foot. Start and then back stitch if you need to. Use that 1/8 of an inch. Put your needle down, lift your foot up, turn it. Sometimes it's a little hard to get it going because of my walking foot, so I need to get my lift my foot up and then lift it back down again. The heavier my fabric is, the more I can tell that that needs to get done, which is why I chose to use A-lining on the underside. Get down to about 1/8 of an inch, lift the foot up, and turn it around again. Go a little bit farther. There we go. Now these corners are always a hard start for me with this heavier fabric. Just finagle it until you can get it to go. Part of it is that my machine's getting old. Alright, there we go. And then back stitch, pull it out and clip your thread. And that's it. Ta-da! Okay, I'm going to start pinning my different plackets in now. I want you to notice that I'm working on the inside of the skirt with the right side on the inside here. This is the wrong side facing out still. I find it easier to work on the inside of the skirt because I can visualize where my seam allowance is as I match these up. So don't forget, we're putting the opening on the wearer's left side, which means that if you look at it, this side seam goes on your right side, this goes on your left side. That means this is the front. So you want that piece that you folded in on itself to go on the front. Okay. You are going to go down 3/8 of an inch from the top. Get a ruler if you need one. Move it back a little bit. The reason why we're doing 3/8 from the top is because your seam allowance needs to be finished here when you sew in your waistband, but you don't want the waistband to continue past the edge of where this matches. Okay, that's going to be a finished edge that will line up right with your side and not have an extension going behind it. This is going to get turned into the inside of the skirt. You'll see in a moment. I know that didn't make much sense, but it will in a minute here. So pin it all the way down. Make sure that it's nice and smooth. You don't want to pull your skirt fabric at all because you're going to get drag lines if you make it too tight as you sew it in. And I believe I drafted these to have a 1 inch length at the bottom, so you shouldn't worry too much about not having enough length for the whole side seam. Okay. Well, looks like I've got about 1/2 inch actually. That's okay. 1/2 inch is completely fine. You just don't want it to match exactly because that would make it kind of flop on the inside. So right here where it matches, put your pin right there so you know where to stop stitching. Okay. You want to catch a single layer of this to the facing. All right. Go down 3/8 of an inch all the way, and then you're going to have a little bit of an extension here at the bottom. So here, 3/8 of an inch, stop and back stitch here. And then we'll go back and show you what that looks like. Okay, here it is sewn, 3/8 of an inch down, start and back stitch there at the top, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then stop and back stitch there right where the stitching ends. Okay, now you can finish this edge with a serged seam or an overcast if you want. You can pink it or you can just leave it. And what I'm going to suggest you do is probably just leave it unless it frays a lot. We're going to press this to the side, and then I want you to top stitch towards this underlap right here, catching both sides of the seam allowance together. When you do that, it's going to cause the outside to curl in like this, which means you're not going to see your underlap piece. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you what it looks like. All right, here's my finished front underlap piece. So this is it finished with the edge pressed. It's nice and crisp edge, and you flip it to the other side and you can see what I mean, that when you press it you can get a little bit of a roll right there. That's great. And then the top stitching is 1/8 of an inch in, and if you flip it over here you can see that that top stitches that fabric down, which keeps it also from fraying. So you are going to want to do this, and then that side's done. And see, since I stopped my stitching right there, that folds in there and that won't create any weirdness down here. Like if you've ever done a placket and there's bubbling, it should not make any bubbling down at the bottom since you made a little hinge here. See, that part's free. Now I realize this is only my second time sewing this, and I should have left this facing up, because then this could be attached together with the waistband, but it doesn't really matter. You can just tack your waistband right here. I apologize, my instructions are going to read a little bit different than this, but just know that this will work too. It's just not exactly the same as in my instructions. So yeah, that just gets folded in there, then your waistband's going to attach up here in another future step. Okay, so it looks really good on the inside, huh? It matches. All right, so let's pin in the other part of the underlap. Wherever it went, it's probably under my cat. Birdie, do you have it? No, you don't. Aha! Okay, we're pinning in our underlap now. Now I want you to do right sides together. This should face your body. This is going to face towards the skirt, so that if you get any peekage here, if a snap comes undone or anything, it's going to be all the self fabric and you're not going to see any petticoats or whatever you've got on underneath. So move it down 3/8 of an inch. Get your handy ruler or seam gauge. All right, about there. Give it a pin. And I want you to continue all the way down just as we did before, matching those edges together. Not pulling them, making sure that they're nice and flush, because you don't want any weird wrinkles or pulling. Okay, sorry, I was off camera there. All the way down there, and you'll have just a little bit of an underlap. Since this is my preliminary pattern, I may add a little bit more length to this. So if yours has more of length at the bottom, that's because I decided to be more beneficial for you to have more length at the bottom of this placket. Okay, do the same thing. Stitch starting at this cross pin, which should be exactly where that seam matches up from the side seam. Stitch all the way to the top and then back stitch. Don't forget to back stitch top and bottom so that it makes sure that it doesn't come undone on you, because that would be a bummer if you do all this work and then your seam comes undone. All right, I'm going to do that and I'll show you. Okay, I'm done stitching this. You can see it's free at the bottom with this little extension, just like the front. Goes up here and it's free 3/8 of an inch. Now if you were going to do this where you wanted to encase this seam, you would sew only the front to the front, go on the inside there, stitch it down, leave this free, and then since this is free, you would turn it under 3/8 of an inch, and then flip this over so that it encloses on this edge. Just lay it right over until the stitching right there. But on the period original that I have, this is just like this, and this is serged. So I'm going to serge mine. If you don't want to serge yours, you can overcast. I'm sure you can find videos online for how to overcast or tutorials. And if you don't want to do that, you may be able to pink it, though I haven't seen any examples in the period of it pinked. If you've got a really fine ravelly fabric, do not pink it, because it will cause your fabric to just go crazy. This is very narrow seam allowance like the period, so you don't want to use a pinking on a fabric that's not substantial. All right, so finish this seam, serging or overcasting or what have you, and then press it flat. And then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, I have pressed that extension out to the side as if it was being worn on the body. Got this one turned under as you press that one. Now we're going to show you how to finish the bottom of these. Okay, so what I want you to do is turn your skirt right side out. This just will make it easier for you to do your placket. I want you to look at the bottom here where is this hinge. There's no puckering. You shouldn't have grabbed any other layers. It should just be kind of a little hinge right here, okay? It goes about 1/2 inch below on my sample. So I'm going to butt these up next to each other. This one is supposed to be longer, so don't freak out if you go, oh my gosh, one's a different size. It's supposed to be, it's okay. That's the way the original that I looked at did it. So I want you to pin this, okay? Do that, and then open it up and look at it. Looks like I might need to move it over a little bit, but what I'm going to do now is put it on an ironing board so that the skirt goes inside as if I'm pressing it, and that'll be a lot easier to figure out my placement. So go with me to my ironing board. Okay, so I have my skirt on my ironing board right side out. The big part of the skirt, the hem goes that way. The waist goes up towards the pointy part of your ironing board, just as if you were going to press it. Okay, now I want you to match here at the top, match the seam allowance exactly where it would be. You can grab your pins if you want, just to get a hang of this. So that should match up exactly, and then pin that crossways. Pin that. Just keep using pins. Don't catch your ironing board cover. You just want to make sure that this lays nice and flat. So after you put a pin in, kind of run your hand along it and make sure that it's doing all right. Now, if you get any puckering here at the end, I want you to move your pin. So let me zoom in here. Okay, so you can see I have a tiny little bit of puckering. You can go in from the bottom of your skirt. Okay, am I on camera? There I am. So you can see where I've got it pinned together. You can let that pin go. Smooth it back out. And until this lays exactly the way you want it to, that looks pretty darn good. Pin it from the right side. Okay, make sure you caught it. Yeah, I got it. Okay, now I'm going to flip this inside out, and you can see my seam right here. Oh, good. Just about perfect. My pin is right here. My finger's right here. All right, my pin's right there. I grabbed it with my hand. That's exactly where I want that. Don't let that go, especially if your fabrics are wiggly. And put a cross pin right there. Now I want you to go and stitch this by machine right here, so that your extension won't flip out when you're wearing it. Okay? Do that and I'll come back. Okay, you can see here I stitched it together, right here. I opted to do a second row right here because I have washed things like this before, and then these can cause some weird bulkiness if you put it in a dryer. So I just decided to stitch there and then stitch there so there'd be no flapping end. Okay, so turn it back right side out. I'll zoom back out again. Here we go. And you can see how nice and flush this lays. There's no weird puckering here at the bottom. Okay, that's your placket done. So what you're going to do next is put your waistband in. After you do your waistband, you'll do your hooks and eyes and snaps. And then you're done with your fasteners there. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it's been beneficial to you. See how nice that is on the inside. I hope this helps you to figure out how to put a fastening in your 1910s skirt, since I know that instructions of period originals can be quite sparse. And I hope this helps you to do all of your great historical projects you have in mind. Have a good day.